Hey, mathematicians, this is Mrs. Shopper coming back. And go figure, I'd be throwing a little curveball again today, right? We just were getting on the groove. But I want to show you a couple things that I think are important, and then we're going to get back to solving absolute value equations. Absolute value is distance from zero, and distance is always positive. So when we're working with absolute value equations, it's important that we make sure that the absolute value is always, the absolute value itself is always equaling a positive number. So I want you to take a look at this. When you have this first one here, right here, it says that the absolute value equals a negative number. Now, it can't equal a negative number because absolute value is distance, and distance from zero is always positive. So it's important that you make sure we say, okay, you know what? This isn't going to work. And so what you get to write down is no real solution. Now, you know how I mentioned that I kind of like the solving absolute value equations because it's a twofer. I get you to solve two equations with one problem. You are going to like these kind of problems because these problems you don't have to solve. Once you know that the absolute value is equal to a negative number, you don't have to solve it. So that helps you also. So it's kind of like a little give and take here, right? So with this next absolute value problem, I have the absolute value of p plus 6 is equal to -5. You can't have an absolute value equal a negative number. So I'm going to say no real solution. Okay. Now, when I look at the next one, wow, that handwriting was fantastic. When I look at the next one, okay, so it equals positive 12. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to work to get the absolute value all alone. I want to get just this piece alone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. And so I get the absolute value of 2x plus 7 is equal to -5. Well, look at that. The absolute value equals a negative number, and I can't have that. So it's going to be no real solution. Okay, no real solution. So let's go through and let's practice some and just see how this goes, okay? We're going to do some of these in class. We're going to do some of them, you know, so I'm going to walk you through. In class, we did breakout rooms, but here I'm going to walk through them. So the first thing we need to do is get that absolute value symbol isolated. I want to get this part all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So 12 is equal to the absolute value of 2x plus 8. Okay. Now, that tells me that 2x plus 8 has to get me to positive 12, and 2x plus 8 needs to get me to negative 12. That's what it's telling me. So those are the two equations that I need to solve now. So do you see what I did there? I got that absolute value symbol by itself first. Once the absolute value symbol was all by itself, that's when I can break it down into two separate equations. So we end up with that 2x plus 8 is -12, and 2x plus 8 is positive 12. And those are my two equations that I solve. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So 2x equals -20. Divide both sides by 2. So x equals -10. So let me shrink this one up a little bit. All right, I'm going to move that. I'm not quite sure where I want to put that yet. Let me shrink this up a little bit. I'm going to shrink this up. There. And then I can take this piece and I'm going to move, whoops, I'm going to move this over to here. And now let's go ahead and work with our other one. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So 2x equals 4. I'm going to undo the multiplication by division. So x equals 2. So I'm going to shift these up here as well. And those are going to be my two answers. X is -10 and x is 2. Okay. So solving my equation that way. So I have to get the absolute value symbol all alone first. Let's take a look at another one. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. My goal is to get this absolute value grouping symbol all alone, all by itself. And so I end up with the absolute value of 5 minus x is equal to 7. Now what that tells me, absolute value symbol is all by itself. So what that tells me is that I need to get to 7 and negative 7, because 7 and negative 7 are both 7 away from 0. So 5 minus x gets me to 7. 5 minus x gets me to negative 7. And those are the 2 equations that I want to solve. So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And I'm going to solve those 2 equations. So 5 minus x equals negative 7. And 5 minus x is equal to positive 7. So I'll subtract 5 from both sides. So negative x equals negative 12. I want to know what positive 12 equals. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. Negative divided by negative is positive. Divide by negative 1. So x equals 12. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So negative x equals 2. And again, I want to know what positive x equals. So divide by negative 1. X equals negative 2. So let's shrink these up a little bit and get those so I can graph it. Let's move them right there. Okay. There we go. And so now when I graph them, I have 12 as one answer and negative 2 as the other. So there we go. Right? Let's try 2 more. And then I'm going to give you, well, I'm going to skip these because we'll talk about those in class. But I want to talk about how do you write an absolute value equation real quickly here. And then I'm going to give you some time to work on problems on the rest of that page. So when we're looking at this, this is what we're going to use. The absolute value of x minus the middle number is equal to difference. So let's see how that plays out. In this first one, so we're taking a graph. And now we're going to write the absolute value equation to match it. Okay, so I'm going to start by writing the absolute value of x minus something is something. Okay, so we're saying the difference between the middle and x is a number. So when I look at negative 2 and 4, the middle is 1. Okay, so that's the number that's going to go right here. Okay. The difference between the number and 1, so the difference between negative 2 or 4 and 1 is, and now we need to see how far it is from the middle to the end, and that is 3. So the absolute value equation that I'm going to write is that the absolute value of the x minus the middle number is equal to 3. Okay, so the 2 things I'm looking for are the middle number, the average of the 2 numbers, and then how far that average is from each of the ends. Let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to start by writing out the absolute value of x minus something is something. Okay, so, oh, look, they're the same problem. Let's fix this up a little bit. Let's go negative 6. And let's go 10. Okay, so I'm changing this problem up because I realized I put the same one in. Human, it happens. We all make mistakes, happens. So the middle of negative 6 and 10. So I can either count, you know, if I want to count in, I could do that all the way to the middle. Or I can say negative 6 plus 10 and divide that by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the middle number is going to be 2. It's the average of the 2 numbers. All right. So x minus the middle number, which is 2, is equal to the difference of 2 to 10, which is 8. So the absolute value of x minus my middle number is equal to how far that middle number is from the end. One more. And then I'm going to let you have some time to work. I'm going to start by writing out what I start out with. The absolute value of x minus a number is equal to the difference. So 17 and 27 are the n2 numbers. So I'm going to take 17 plus 27 and cut it in half. So 44 divided by 2 is 22. So 22 is my middle number. So x minus 22 is, and the difference between 22 and 27 is 5. And that's how you write an absolute value equation. So I'm going to give you some time to work. The next time we meet, we're going to be talking about how to rewrite an equation in y equals. Stay tuned. We'll see you soon.